Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the United Kingdom, where we look like we are heading to a civil war on the streets. So I know I said I wasn't going to do another video about this, but I think in a global context, this is relevant. Now, we've had these two incidents over the last couple of days where we've had this tragic death of Peter Lynch, who was one of the protesters who was arrested for the Rotherham riots. He was arrested and charged because he had a placard that said some people were corrupt, and he said some mean things to the police. So he was arrested, sent to prison for, I think, 2 years and 8 months. We've also had a guy shot by the police in 2022, and the police officer cleared of murder. Now, this was obviously the Chris Carver shooting. Now, guys, I did a video yesterday on Chris Carver. If you've watched that video, if you've not watched it, actually, go and watch that now. And I lay out how this should have never even been to court. The fact that this police officer, who's been named, I won't name him here, but the fact that this police officer's now been charged with something that should never have happened. It's a show trial. It's to please a certain demographic. Now, the fact that there's been protests out on the street over Chris Carver and no protests over Peter Lynch, it says quite a lot about the type of people that protest now in the United Kingdom. So these people who've been out on the streets protesting, they've been protesting for Black Lives Matter. They want change. Now, if you've seen the footage, as far as I'm concerned, it's a cut and shut case. There's no trial. There should have never been a trial. Anybody should have looked at that footage and saw that guy, Chris Carver, trying to ram through police cars. He was endangering life by his driving. The armed police officers were there clearly for a reason. And, what happened. So these people that are asking for change, and these things are only going to grow, guys, and I'll come on to why they're going to grow afterwards. But these people who are asking for change, what do they like? What change do they want? Are these people protesting because they want change in the context that, do they want armed police officers just off the streets? Because I was watching a Liberal commentator last night on, it was one of the mainstream channels, and I just couldn't believe the incompetence of the things that she was saying. And the counter argument to this was just as bad. So they've now got obviously when they have divisive issues, they have somebody from the left and somebody from the political right. Again, there is no left and right anymore, but they have people from the perceived left and the perceived right, to argue this with opposing opinions. There was no argument, and this Liberal woman, her arguments were absolutely absurd. She was saying, I couldn't quite understand what she actually wanted, but as I understand it, she was asking for change, and she was asking for more, more legislation around armed police. And I was thinking, what more legislation do you want around armed police? Do we really want a situation right now in the United Kingdom where we just take armed police off the streets? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? And guys, honestly, right now in the United Kingdom, it would not surprise me if Keir Starmer came up and he said, listen, guys, these armed police, those guns, they're hurting people. So we're not gonna have guns anymore. We're gonna have a situation in the United Kingdom where the only people that carry guns are criminals. So if we take our armed officers off the streets, what deterrence? How can unarmed police officers deal with an armed threat? You just can't. It's not possible. And you've got to think about our rank and file police officers. I spent a lot of time in the military. We did a lot of cross training with those type of people, and a lot of that, I'm going to say, guys, they're, from what I've seen and what I've witnessed, those guys who do that job are all good guys. They're pragmatic guys. They're good guys, and they get the job done. Obviously not as good as the military guys, but it is what it is. Now, if we say we're taking those guys off the ground, or I don't know, like something ridiculous, like one of these Liberal commentators might want, I don't know, you have to have your systems locked in the boot of your car, and then you're only allowed to take them out once you get a request sent to a judge, and then a judge signs it. Can you imagine what the carnage that's going to cause? So why have we got here? Why are we here right now in the United Kingdom? Why are we in a situation when we're even discussing this? Why are we in a situation where we're having people sent to prison for, almost 3 years for signs? We're having people not sent to prison for attacking police officers. We're having violent criminals released from prison early. Why are we in the situation that we're in here? Well, I've done a video on it before, guys, okay? It's called ideological subversion. So the 4 stages of ideological subversion are demoralization, where you would pump into a country propaganda, you would try and divide a country, you would try and uneducate people. I mean, look at the education system at the moment. We wonder why we have these fake degrees and these fake educational courses. It's to uneducate people, because if you've got a degree in, I don't know, I don't even know if this is one, in neo paint drying time in the 20th century, if you're the world's most foremost expert in neo paint drying time, not neon, new, in neo paint drying time in the 21st century, you're led to believe that your degree and your education has just as much strength as somebody who's got a degree in particle physics, with a master's in astrophysics or a master's in maths or a degree in biology, one of the main sciences. So then you have these people who think they're intellectual arguing and trying to argue with a person who is really intellectual, and then so it just erodes society. And then you attack religion, you attack the schools, you attack the foundations, you attack anything really, and then you try and divide a nation. So black and white's easy to divide, men and women's easy to divide, trans and non-trans, furries and non-furries. You do anything you can to divide a society. That's your investment phase. If it was in the military, you call it your investment phase. It's the demoralization phase. Then comes the destabilization phase. So in the destabilization phase, you want to have protests. You want to have protests and counter protests, and you want these protests and counter protests to become as kinetic as they can, like we've seen in the United Kingdom, and all the time our enemies are pumping money into this. And you know what, guys, it doesn't take much, because at the moment we've got a situation where you don't need much of a spark to light a fire in the United Kingdom. There's so much animosity on the streets. There's so much ill feeling towards different parts of our society. So after the destabilization phase, then comes the crisis phase. So what's the crisis phase? Well, that's when the streets are on fire, we're in a civil war, and we have to have the military on the streets. That's where I feel we're heading right now. If you look at a global spectrum, the white working class British male, they're the ones who our adversaries fear, because they're the ones who can organize and can be greater than the sum of their own parts. All you have to do is look back through history and look at, the British military history. And if you degrade that, and if you erode that, and if you make a political class that are not willing to accept this, then our enemies, Iran and Russia, potentially China, they have an easy hand, because we can't field a military against them. So in the crisis phase, we're not in the crisis phase yet. We're in the destabilization phase. We're about to heading towards the crisis phase. So in the crisis phase, this is when you have mass protests on the streets, pretty much like the protests in August that turned into a lot of rioting. But that on a scale, for months and months and months, that would just keep going. That would be when you're in the crisis phase. After the crisis phase comes the normalization phase. Now, the normalization phase, what we're talking about in ideological subversion, I'm trying to keep this video short, guys, and I do understand there's lots of caveats and intricacies and complexities. The normalization phase, when we're talking about ideological subversion, would be when a foreign power moves in and takes control of that country. I don't think that's going to happen in the United Kingdom. What I do think will happen is you will see a strong leader emerge, a strong draconian leader that will emerge, and people will just follow that leader. Why? Because the country's in chaos and they will do anything for anyone as long as they make it stop. Now, people don't understand these processes because people, especially politicians, and a lot of these politicians that we've got now, guys, are really inept and they don't understand history. They can't look back. They can't look outside their constituents. They can't look outside their field of view because they're not capable. So a lot of these, and they're not capable because they've been led that way, because we don't have democracy at the moment in the United Kingdom. We have late stage democracy, which is linked to late stage capitalism, and everybody right now scurrying to make a few quid because they see the writings on the wall. But unfortunately, guess who's going to be there to pay the bills? Yep, me, you, and everybody else in the United Kingdom who is a taxpayer. Anyway, so what's going to happen is you're going to have a normalization phase. You normally have, like I said, a foreign nation would move in with tanks, with guns. They take over control, they seize control of government, and they say, right, okay, we're going to calm this thing down and we'll start the new normalization phase now, which would normally be people speaking Russian. I don't feel that's going to happen in the United Kingdom. We're going to have a situation where we have to have a strong leader emerge. People will just do whatever that strong leader says because they say they're going to make it stop. You know, you only have to look at things that happened in Germany in the 1930s that led to the rise of, you know, the guy that we can't say his name, and the certain party that we can't say their name as well. But that's what happens in ideological subversion, guys. So we're heading in towards the crisis phase right now in the United Kingdom. Elon Musk said civil war is inevitable in the United Kingdom. I don't see a way how we can avert it right now. Mainly because we have a political class who don't realize where we're heading. They think that everything's fine. They think that everything's fine because the people who are subverting them are probably the same people who are planning on subversion. Guys, absolutely wild times in the United Kingdom at the moment. Let me know what you think. Do you think that civil war is inevitable in the United Kingdom? Or do you think that this is just a natural growing process because we're having, you know, we've got more people, more humanity, doctors, engineers, and, you know, potential politicians coming into this country every day? Do we see that as a good thing, a bad thing? You know, I think you guys know my opinion. You know, I would love to debate with some of these liberals because a lot of these people who are on TV, it's like, you know, these liberals are being debated by people with their kid gloves on. You know, like when you're wrestling with your 40-year-old nephew, you're never going to go full, you know, you're never going to go full fat on him. You're always going to like pull your punches, and you're not going to throw him as hard as you would in a competition. But guys, absolutely wild times. Like I said, you know, we are heading into a direction now that's not good. I personally don't see a way out of it, especially with the global conflicts that we're looking at. Our adversaries will be pumping more and more money into these groups that splinter our society. Ideological subversion's happening. It happens on such a long time frame that our politicians can't see it because they're inept and they only look in 4-year cycles. Guys, wild times. I'm going to max a grid, and I'll get you guys another video later.